Welcome to the audio fiction novel book, Swordplay Wuxia novel, traveled to another world and became a Buddhist nun at Mount Amei Book 1. Voiced by Ava from Clipchamp. Written by author Dai Pham. Introducing the plot. In a not-so-distant future, the year 2035, the protagonist is leading a seemingly normal life. On a weekend trip to visit family in Jolla Province, he stops by an AM store to pick up vitamin supplements, unaware that this day will change his fate forever. On his way home, a reckless driver, blinded by a heavy downpour, crashes into his car, leaving him critically injured. The accident places him in a coma, with his body paralyzed and doctors predicting he may remain in a vegetative state. Meanwhile, in a far-off realm known as the world of the gods, the creator watches over humanity's fragile existence. A vision of impending doom unfolds. An ancient virus is set to resurface on Earth, threatening to annihilate mankind. In an attempt to save humanity from extinction, the creator sends angels to Earth, searching for worthy individuals to grant them extraordinary powers, offering them the chance to fight against the impending pandemic. In the year 2035, in the Republic of Korea, on a typical Saturday and Sunday at the end of each month, Kim Young-woo would visit his family in the southern region of Jolla. This month, his family had just run out of some nitrate vitamins and minerals, so he planned to stop by the multi-level marketing store AM to buy more to bring home. He called a taxi to take him there, and during the ride, he browsed the AM website to check for any promotions or new products. He added the necessary items to his cart and placed an order. The AM staff would pack the items in advance, and all he needed to do was go there, pay and pick them up. This method helped Young-woo save time compared to physically shopping, standing in line to pay, and waiting to collect the goods, especially since AM stores were usually very crowded. After receiving his boxed goods, he took another taxi to head back home. By this time, the afternoon had turned to evening, and the light was softer than during the day. As he traveled, light raindrops began to fall, and traffic on the road remained busy. The rain gradually became heavier. The driver, with many years of experience, slowed down the taxi as the rain intensified. The evening grew darker, and streetlights along both sides of the road flickered on. The taxi continued to drive steadily through the main roads, under bridges. It was now fully dark, and based on the current speed of 40 kilometers per hour, it was estimated that he would reach home by 8 p.m. A relatively slow speed for a car, but necessary due to the weather. The taxi continued driving steadily through many roads. But at this moment, another car came speeding from the right at an intersection. It seemed as though the driver didn't see the taxi that Young-woo was in. Strangely, the car was going much faster than usual, especially in such rainy weather. And as expected, the inevitable happened. It shot forward and slammed hard into the side where Young-woo was seated. Startled, he shouted, "What's happening?" Seconds later, the taxi spun multiple times before crashing into the guardrail. It took some time before nearby residents called an ambulance, and both drivers were taken to the hospital. This was the event that took place on Saturday. Now, let's go back to the morning of that Saturday. In the divine realm, the Creator, Jehovah, was observing everything from his vast, omniscient view of the universe. Suddenly, he sensed a strange disturbance within himself. Digging deeper, he discovered a looming danger that threatened to strike and destroy the inhabitants of a small blue planet called Earth. He saw horrifying visions and knew he couldn't allow this to happen. At that moment, he summoned a female angel and instructed her to go to Earth, seek out a suitable individual, and offer indirect assistance to this person, to save humanity. The creators say, "Go to Earth, find suitable individuals, and guide them to save humanity." The gods are beings that assist humanity and all living creatures, offering guidance. However, they are bound by an eternal law. They may only provide direction and guidance. They are not allowed to intervene directly using their powers. The angels say, "I will obey." The angel immediately set out to follow the command. She soared through the heavens, across countless galaxies, and approached Earth. At this point, she used her divine powers to scan the planet, and she detected a faint signal from a suitable individual in the Republic of Korea. The signal was weak, so she descended through layers of clouds, heading directly towards the source of this faint energy. Flying over many cities in Korea, she hovered in the air, observing and sensing. She passed over several cities, but had yet to feel a clear indication. Searching from early morning until midday on Sunday, she finally exclaimed, "I've found the right person." Among the billions of individuals on Earth, only a few could sense the divine purely, and even fewer possessed the qualities that the gods would deem worthy. The fragmentation of nations and the divergence of cultures had led to the diminishing ability to truly sense the divine. After an emergency surgery into Sunday morning, Young-woo's family arrived at the hospital, settled the bills, and received a devastating blow. Their loved one, their son, their brother, had sustained such severe injuries that there was only a 1% chance of waking up. The doctor said, "Patient Kim Young-woo has suffered brain trauma and spinal cord injuries leading to a coma. His body may be unable to move, and there is a possibility he could become a vegetative state in the future." The Woo family was stunned, crying as if the rain had come. They were angry and decided to file a lawsuit against the person responsible for the accident that night. The accident had left both the protagonist and the driver severely injured. Sadly, the protagonist was in a coma, facing the possibility of being in a vegetative state. His life, as it seemed, was over and abandoned from then on. In his coma, amidst the confusion, he heard the cries of his family, but remained unconscious. In his subconscious, he heard a gentle, pure voice. "Kim Young-woo, Kim Young-woo." He looked around at the space surrounded by a bright white light, unable to discern where he was. He saw his body floating, and when he looked down, he couldn't see his legs. He thought perhaps he had died, and this might be the way to heaven. At that moment, a beautiful figure appeared, radiating a brilliant golden light. Above her head, a halo of golden light shone, symbolizing her angelic nature. He asked, "Who are you? Are you an angel?" Angel said, "Yes, I am an angel of the Creator. I am here to offer you a chance to return. You have been in an accident, and your entire body is paralyzed and frozen, unable to move. I bring you an opportunity to return to your former life, if you accept. But you must complete a task assigned by the Creator." Young-woo replied, I agree to all your terms. I accept everything as long as I can return to normal." How could Kim Young-woo be foolish enough to refuse when given another chance? Especially a chance to return to being a healthy, normal person, no matter how difficult the task may be. Upon receiving his consent, the angel immediately used her power to draw energy from the eternal moon to open a portal. She then transported Young-woo's soul into it. Just as he was about to depart, Young-woo reached out and asked, "How will I return to the original world after completing this task?" As soon as he finished speaking, his form vanished in an instant within the blinding white light. He flew into the portal, transitioning from a white space to a gradually darker, sloping tunnel, becoming darker and darker. After a while, he could see distant sparkling lights, a blend of light blue with a hint of green from vegetation. He continued to fly through, moving into an even darker space. He heard a voice in his mind. "Go to that world, learn the skills and abilities there. At some point, you will be able to return." Thus, the journey of Kim Young-woo was about to begin. Let me briefly recount the history of this world. This is a Wuxia world. In 1273 BC, a great fortress named Xiangyang was breached and destroyed. The heroic general and his wife, who had defended the fortress until the end, chose to commit suicide to protect the last vestiges of their honor when the fortress was breached. Their daughter and son fled, separated to escape the disaster. One of their daughters, who carried a treasured sword known as the Etian sword, fled and, during her escape, accidentally helped a young nun named Pu Xian. The latter would later spread the martial arts of her master and gain fame across the world. The daughter of the general and his wife was named Guxiang. Guxiang fled, retreating and hiding in an ancient tomb with Yang Gua and his wife. In the year 1352, after many years of seclusion in the depths of ancient tombs in the mountains, the nun Pu Xian descended from the mountains to travel the world and hone her skills. After the fall of Xiangyang Fortress, the Mongol army conquered the southern Song dynasty after several years, subduing the country. Continuous purges and killings ensued, with many Mongol military and civilian forces establishing new bases in the southern Song territory, resulting in numerous acts of plunder and murder against the local populace. The new Mongol dynasty, after taking over for a few years, became somewhat more lenient towards the local people. The rampant plundering ceased, though some of their subordinate forces continued to engage in sporadic acts of violence. Despite this, the Mongol court turned a blind eye to these occurrences due to their infrequency. This situation continued for many years. In 1352, in a small village, a few Mongols attacked, plundering, killing, and raping, leaving almost no survivors. In the village was a prosperous family. On the day of the attack, the protagonist's mother had gone to visit her maternal family. When she returned, she found the entire village slaughtered. Terrified, she fled into the forest, but was unfortunately discovered by a Mongol raider. The raider grinned menacingly and laughed heartily. The protagonist's mother, frightened, tried to escape, carrying a 7-month-old child in her stomach. The Mongol raider used his skills to throw a spear, which flew swiftly and pierced through her back, impaling her chest. She bled profusely and collapsed to the ground, where she gave birth to the child and then passed away. The raider approached, retrieved his spear, and left without checking further. As for these raiders, killing the local people was merely a pastime when they were bored. The premature baby was almost dead, with only a fraction of life remaining. At this moment, the protagonist Yongwu's soul transmigrated into the body of the baby, who was gasping for breath. She lay within his mother's dress, struggling to move. In his mind, he thought that if entering this world was like in the novels he had heard about, the main characters should have a system or a golden hand to help them. So he decided to call out loudly, "System, system, system." Despite his repeated calls, there was no response. Nothing at all. Exhausted from his efforts, he eventually fell asleep. While he was calling out beneath his mother's skirt, a nun named Pu Xian happened to pass by the area. She heard the faint sound of a baby crying, and upon careful searching, she discovered Yongwu's mother's lifeless body in the bushes. Under her skirt was a small, moving object, gently crying. Yongwu's calls for the system were only heard as weak cries by the outside world. The nun Pu Xian gently uncovered the baby and exclaimed, "The baby is still alive." She wrapped the baby in a piece of cloth and held him close. She then continued on her way. Pu Xian also found many other orphan children in the forest. By this time, night had fallen. She led these children with her, and upon learning about the devastation in their village, she could only perform rituals to help the souls of the deceased. Recalling her own past, Pu Xian remembered that if not for her master's help, she might have perished in the siege of the fortress. She felt a pang of sympathy and sorrow. After a moment, she said, "Do you want to come with me? I will take care of you." Thus, the nun gained a group of children following her. She traveled through many places, discovering many more orphan children. She adopted them and took them to the mountains. Due to the large number, she decided to settle on Mount Amei, where she had a large temple built to house the children and teach them reading and martial arts. This place later became a legendary holy site in Buddhist lore, equated with the major sects of the Murim world. After inhabiting the body of the premature and fragile baby, the protagonist's ability to learn and practice martial arts was significantly impacted, leading to scorn from the other disciples in the temple. For years later, when the protagonist was 4 years old, the nun Pu Xian said to him, "My child, now that you are 4 years old, you should start learning the literacy and the inner strength techniques of our sect." The protagonist, now given a new name according to the nun's surname, was named Pu Yi and became the sect's first eldest disciple. Although Pu Xian had taught martial arts to other, older children before Pu Yi, she showed more affection towards Pu Yi. This uneven distribution of affection led to subtle jealousy among the children, which grew more intense over time. Thus, the protagonist continued to grow up in the nun's temple. As time passed, another 8 years went by. During these 8 years, Pu Yi diligently studied literacy and inner strength. By the age of 5, he reached the first stage of entry-level martial arts. It wasn't until he was 12 that Pu Yi achieved level 10 in inner strength, mastering the Jade Maiden Heart Sutra with a score of 100 out of 100. Pu Yi also began shaving her head like the other junior sisters in the temple. Master Pu Xian gave Pu Yi 2 books, one on the entry-level techniques of swordsmanship and the other on the Du Yuan method. She practiced these 2 new techniques alongside her cultivation of the Jade Maiden Inner Strength. Pu Yi diligently trained in swordsmanship and Du Yuan every day. Because of her master's favor, she did not need to do any chores but only had to focus on her training, while the other disciples were required to both practice and perform many tasks in the temple. The boys rescued by Pu Xian were assigned to live near the base of the mountain, helping with gardening, fetching water, and guiding pilgrims who came to the temple to worship, thus providing some income for the temple. The temple's reputation was still modest, so the number of visitors was limited, leading to financial difficulties. To improve income, besides farming for food, Pu Xian also grew various herbs to sell for additional money to support the children. As time passed, 12 years flew by. Despite her age, Pu Xian retained a youthful appearance. Pu Yi's second junior sister, named Man Kun, was very talented. In the 12 years since joining, having learned martial arts from Pu Xian, she had reached level 32, demonstrating extremely rapid progress and high talent. However, she still had to work like the other sisters in the temple. Since observing the differential affection from the master towards Pu Yi, Man Kun felt uncomfortable. She began to form cliques and speak ill of Pu Yi secretly. Tue Mei said, "Senior sister, have you heard? Elder sister Pu Yi has reached level 10. Man Kun replied, "Shoo, keep it quiet. That girl is really just a useless waste." After gossiping about Pu Yi, they laughed quietly. They did not realize that Pu Yi was the soul from another world, having taken over the body of the baby Pu Yi, who should have died long ago. The body was essentially lifeless, and Yongwu's presence revived it. With a body lacking vitality, Pu Yi's martial arts training was inherently flawed. Despite this, Pu Yi worked extremely hard and, thanks to the affection from her master, was able to achieve accomplishments that others considered unattainable. Elsewhere, the angel who had transported Yongwu to another world found a suitable body for him. After that, the angel returned to continue her journey to another world. On the moon of the Langhu world, the angel selected many moonstones. She used her divine power to refine these stones. After a great deal of refining, she created a soul ring and named it the Soul Ring after the world it came from. She then returned, preparing to present this ring to Yongwu to assist him. The refining process took an immense amount of time. The time for deities is not like that of mortals. 1 second for a deity can be equivalent to a year for a human. The exact duration of the refining process is unknown. In the Wuxia world, Pu Yi continues to train diligently each day, advancing to the first level of the Jade Maiden Sword technique and the first level of the Du Yuan technique. Another year passed, and Pu Yi, now 13 years old, has reached level 11 in internal energy, but the other 2 skills have not progressed further. Since the protagonist is a male soul inhabiting a female body in the Wuxia world, the text will use she to describe the protagonist. In the main hall of the Buddhist temple, Master Pu Xian was chanting sutras when Man Kun came as requested by Pu Xian. Pu Xian said, "Man Kun, once the eldest sister Pu Yi reaches level 20, please teach her lightness skill." Man Kun replied, "Yes, I understand. But Master, the eldest sister really lacks talent. I believe you should assign her tasks similar to those we do." Pu Xian said, "I know I have my own plans. Now, you may return to your duties." Returning to the modern world, in the northern region of A, in the land of No Dao Tian Det, a large iceberg cracked open, causing the rupture of an underground structure beneath the ice and soil. An old World War II laboratory, worn down by weather and time, was eroded by the melting ice caused by global warming and rising sea levels. The facility, now dissolved, contained an ancient virus previously unknown. This virus slowly spread through ocean currents, gradually dissolving and mixing with experimental viruses released from the laboratory, evolving into a new virus that infected marine life and flying animals. Birds that consumed virus-infected shrimp spread the virus through their droppings, contaminating everything from the sea to the land. The virus clung to vegetables and fruits, leading to infections among people who ate these contaminated foods. It spread rapidly. Once inside the body, it caused fever within hours, followed by unconsciousness, death a few hours later, and then a transformation into ravenous, undead creatures always craving food, similar to zombies in games. In another area, a brightly lit room, a man was live streaming while eating. He enjoyed some raw shrimp with sauce and chatted with his viewers. A few hours after the live stream ended, he began feeling dizzy and hot. He went to the cabinet to get some fever medicine, but as he was about to swallow a few pills, he collapsed. A few hours later, he too became one of the ravenous, undead creatures. In another location, inside a sushi restaurant, a woman was drinking a beverage while enjoying a plate of salmon sushi. She savored the sweet taste of the salmon after dipping it in soy sauce and wasabi. After finishing her meal, she paid and left. After walking for a while, she started feeling dizzy and leaned against a wall, gradually moving forward. She collapsed, unconscious, and a few hours later, she transformed into a ravenous creature, staggering and wandering until she ended up in a park around 6 p.m. when there were still a few people around. Seeing a man jogging, she rushed over, jumped onto his shoulders, and bit into his neck, tearing out flesh and blood as she chewed. The jogger, suddenly attacked from behind, cried out in pain, "Damn it! How dare you bite your grand?" He pushed her away, kicked her, and quickly ran off, clutching the wound on his neck, exclaiming, "Where the hell did this bitch come from?" He ran away swiftly. Meanwhile, the woman who had been pushed down quickly chewed and swallowed what she had bitten, then chased after him. The man ran swiftly through the park, which was less crowded in the evening but still had a few people around. As she pursued him, she noticed several other people and decided to switch targets, moving toward the nearest individual. The woman saw someone running toward her and was suspicious. Before she could react, the zombie woman lunged at her, starting to bite and tear at her. The zombie bit forcefully into the woman's nose, ripping it apart and chewing on it. The woman, taken by surprise, fell to the ground. She was then attacked with a powerful bite that tore a large section of her nose. In pain, she cried out, "Ah!" But before she could say much more, the zombie woman bit into her lips, tearing them apart. In agony, the woman pushed the zombie away, scrambled to her feet, and tried to flee. Others who witnessed the brutal scene were horrified and ran away, afraid of being attacked themselves, leaving the woman behind to suffer in pain without any help. The zombie woman continued to chew and swallow, then pursued the fleeing woman. She tackled her to the ground, bit into her neck, and tore out a large chunk. With a significant wound, blood flowed profusely, and the woman, feeling dizzy and helpless, began to lose consciousness. And then, what was inevitable came next. In another area, the man who had been bitten and lost a lot of blood started feeling dizzy as well. He sat on the edge of the sidewalk, leaning against a nearby wall, clutching his neck where the large wound was. Before he could call for emergency help, he lost consciousness within a few minutes. A few hours later, he too became a zombie. The virus transmitted through blood spreads at a terrifyingly fast rate, often within hours or even minutes, faster than transmission through contaminated food. And so, the city began to be plagued by the spread of the ancient zombie virus. Animals infected with the virus continued to fly from the ocean to the land, spreading the virus through their droppings everywhere. Curiously, this virus did not turn animals into zombies. They retained their awareness of life. It seemed that this virus only affected humans. Could it be a biological weapon for mass killing? Back in the ancient otherworld, in the private chamber of the protagonist Pu-yi, she continued to train day and night. Thanks to the affection of her master, Pu-xian, Pu-yi did not have to work hard like the other disciples in the monastery. She dedicated all her time to training, focusing on internal energy and swordsmanship. Sadly, Pu-yi's body was very weak and ineffective. Despite her efforts, she was unable to advance quickly. It took a long time to progress to a new level. Eventually, the Du Yuan Transcendence Technique reached the first stage of martial arts mastery. This technique was highly beneficial as it helped practitioners increase their internal energy recovery speed. Normally, the human body would automatically recover what was lost, with internal energy restoring by 1 point per second. Meditation could increase this rate by 50%. However, using the Du Yuan technique greatly accelerated the recovery speed. At the first stage of Du Yuan, it consumed 10 points of internal energy to restore 100 points of internal energy within 10 seconds. This technique was effective whether sitting in meditation or standing in stillness. The Nok Nu Sword Technique, Jade Maiden Sword Technique, improved with higher levels, enhancing proficiency and increasing damage. The higher the stage, the more refined and flexible the international of internal energy, and the more powerful the attack. The basic sword technique already had offensive and damaging properties, and when combined with internal energy, its power became even greater at higher levels. Master Pu Xian mentioned that her martial arts originated from Master Kuo Xiang at the ancient tomb. There are many martial arts techniques that can be learned, but mastering all of them to perfection is impossible. Therefore, disciples are encouraged to focus on the techniques they prefer and train in that direction without any constraints. All disciples can learn all techniques according to their internal energy level. Learning according to the basic level of internal energy is also very beneficial for all disciples, as having more skills makes it easier to survive and protect oneself in this chaotic era, especially when venturing outside. Additionally, in the monastery, among the shelves of scriptures, there is a set of internal energy techniques from another sect called 5 Poisons Secret Classic. Training in this technique can enhance resistance to poisons, which is very useful for enduring the trials of the mortal world. The manual has been passed down through many generations and is said to have originated from the female hero Mo Cho. For those who have read the novel The Return of the Condor Heroes, the character Mo Cho is known for this manual. To master all martial arts to perfection would require extraordinary talent. It is impossible for ordinary people. Each martial art requires time to practice, and with too many techniques, there will not be enough time or energy. Humans have a lifespan of no more than 130 years, which is insufficient to master everything. Moreover, if one's innate talent is not good, even practicing a single martial art for a lifetime may not lead to completion. Thus, there are countless mediocre practitioners in the martial world, serving as stepping stones and being trampled upon by others. To master all martial arts to perfection would require extraordinary talent. It is impossible for ordinary people. Each martial art requires time to practice, and with too many techniques, there will not be enough time or energy. Humans have a lifespan of no more than 130 years, which is insufficient to master everything. Moreover, if one's innate talent is not good, even practicing a single martial art for a lifetime may not lead to completion. According to Man Kun, Pu-yi might be one of those who are considered incompetent, and Man Kun holds a great disdain for the senior sister Pu-yi. In her private room, Pu-yi was delighted to have advanced in her skills. Every day, she meticulously divides her time between rigorous training, eating, sleeping, and reciting Buddhist scriptures, spending around 12 hours on these activities. The remaining time is dedicated to practicing martial arts. Before long, another year passed and Pu-yi turned 13. Her internal energy had advanced to level 11, reaching a maximum of 120 out of 120. Characters' names will be changed to be easier to read according to another phonetic transcription. The swordsmanship and the Dongguan, Duyuan skill remained stagnant. Despite this, Pu-yi did not feel discouraged and continued to diligently cultivate, even though she occasionally noticed strange glances from some people. Today, it was another nun's turn to carry a basket of herbs down to the town for sale. The temple often grows a variety of herbs, which are used as ingredients to refine medicine to restore internal strength. These herbs help cultivators and martial artists quickly recover their internal energy called Hon Dan. There are different levels: basic, intermediate, and advanced. Since the Mongol court sent officials to govern the area, the situation in the town has become much safer, and the lives of the local people have improved. Cities, villages, and towns have thrived. The locals have started to live harmoniously with the Mongols. However, in more distant regions, banditry and killing still occur, though not frequently, they are still present. To transport goods safely, merchant teams must always be accompanied by high-level escorts, known as escort agencies. Larger organizations have even established their own transport branches. The monetary system remains mostly the same as under the previous dynasty, with only slight differences. For example, 100 copper coins equate to a small piece of silver. 100 small silver pieces equal 1 large silver ingot. 10 large silver ingots equal 1 small gold nugget. 10 small gold nuggets equal 1 gold ingot. 100 gold ingots equal a golden block of 100 grams. For livelihood, aside from farming, people can trade in the village, work for an organization, or take on reward-based tasks from guilds, much like in modern times. Back to the protagonist of the story. Since arriving in this world, the protagonist has lived here for nearly 13 years, residing on Mount Amei, deeply loved by her master. The knowledge from the modern world remains intact in her mind, but due to her weak constitution, she spends most of her time focusing on cultivation. Things like creating artificial lighting or a water system are still in the planning stages. At this point, Fogi has grown to a height of 1.3 meters. In the temple, they only have vegetables, porridge, and tofu, no meat or fish. Her body absorbs nutrients less efficiently than in the modern world, so her height has not developed well. Fogi thought that, in the future, she should teach everyone how to grow bean sprouts to improve their meals and get calcium from them for height growth. One difficult issue in this world is the scarcity of zinc-rich foods, an essential factor in promoting bone development and height growth. Fogi struggled to recall the foods that contain zinc, and after a bit of effort, she finally remembered a few available in this world. These included pomegranates, oranges, and mushrooms. Eating 1 pomegranate could provide 1 milligram of zinc, which, combined with consuming sprouted beans, would be enough for growth. In the forest at the base of the mountain, white mushrooms would often appear. They could be gathered to supplement her diet. However, the journey to collect them would take up time, cutting into her cultivation. At that thought, Fogi abandoned the idea. The temple's income wasn't much either. They relied on growing vegetables and herbs to sell, but even that brought in only a few coins. The challenge all disciples faced with this martial art was mastering the use of internal energy within their sword strikes. The lower one's internal energy, the shorter the duration of its use. A single strike with a sword infused with internal energy would consume all of Fogi's strength. Her internal energy was still weak, and she had not yet mastered the art of channeling it efficiently. As a result, each sword strike drained all her internal power, leaving her unable to follow up with a second blow. The other sisters in the temple, once their internal energy reached levels 12 to 15, could effortlessly control how much energy to use. When their energy was nearly depleted, they would activate the Dongguan skill to speed up its recovery. Every time Fogi ran out of internal energy, she had to sit in meditation to quickly restore it. She had already reached the second level of the Dongguan technique, and after sitting in still meditation and waiting for her internal energy to recover up to 20 points, she could activate the skill. The price of cabbage was merely 3 coins per kilogram, herbs fetched a pitiful amount, and celandine sold for just 12 coins per kilogram. Only Platycodon grandiflorus was sold at a higher price, 10 coins for a single stalk. Life was truly difficult. On the mountain, the weather was cold, and fog was common. Meanwhile, the nearest water source was a stream near the base of the mountain, making the task of carrying water up a laborious one. These thoughts lingered in Fogi's mind. Time passed quickly, and yet another year arrived. Throughout the year of cultivation, Fogi had progressed to the 12th level of internal energy. Her swordsmanship and Dongguan skill had both advanced by 1 tier as well. With this second level achieved, Fogi could now channel internal energy into her sword techniques, significantly increasing her attack power. Once there, she would expend 20 points of energy to perform the supporting Dongguan technique, which would restore 200 points of energy in just 10 seconds. However, since her Nok Nu Tomkin, Jade Maiden Heart Sutra, internal energy technique was only at level 13, Fogi could only restore 160 points, falling short by 40. This made her already slow cultivation pace even slower. The longer it took, the slower her skill advancement became. Both her basic swordsmanship and Dongguan techniques had a total of 7 levels, and Fogi was only at the 2nd level, while her sisters and fellow disciples had already reached. Nok Nu, Jade Maiden swordsmanship didn't advance just by practicing. It required using internal energy to level up. But cultivating internal energy demanded long meditation sessions, which consumed a lot of time. Each time she cultivated a bit, Fogi would run out of energy and have to sit and meditate to recover it quickly, then use her skill again to continue. This endless cycle of cultivation, depletion, and meditation felt never-ending. Sometimes, out of sheer boredom, Fogi wouldn't even bother meditating and instead let her body naturally recover. She would shift her focus to other things, perhaps working on cultivating her internal energy or advancing her Dongguan technique. In the forest at the base of the mountain, white mushrooms often appeared and could be gathered as a supplement. She pondered, maybe I could train while walking, as it would take time for my internal energy to recover on its own anyway. My progress is hampered by my weak internal energy. Thinking this way, Fogi decided to follow through with her plan. She didn't know how long she would remain in this world, but staying here with a small, frail body was unacceptable. That couldn't be allowed. So, every other day, Fogi went around the mountain to gather white mushrooms to improve her diet and that of some of the other sisters in the temple. She made simple dishes such as steamed mushrooms, boiled mushrooms, and mushroom soup. After managing to obtain nutrients like zinc from mushrooms, pomegranates, and oranges, Fogi then decided to dig a pond to collect water on the mountain, thus reducing the hardship of her younger sisters. With that thought in mind, she went to see her master. Entering the meditation hall, her master was still chanting scriptures. She waited until the chanting ended before speaking. "Master, I want to dig a pond near the air garden. I know how to collect water from the morning dew," Fogi said. Her master, Fo Hien, was pleased yet somewhat skeptical. You can collect water from the morning dew? If that's true, it's excellent. Go ahead and do it, but don't neglect your martial training. Fo Hien replied. Yes, master, I understand, Fo Gi said. Afterward, Fo Gi went outside. At that moment, she felt her internal energy fully restored. Standing near the courtyard, she struck with her sword, expending all her inner energy. Then, taking a hoe, she approached the near herb garden and began digging a deep, wide pit about 5 meters across. The younger nun sisters who were watering the herb garden noticed her, but weren't sure what their elder nun sister was planning. They continued weeding, while others kept watering the plants. On Mount Amei, only female disciples had the right to learn martial arts, while the men lived at the foot of the mountain, growing vegetables and working as mountain guards until they turned 12. After that, they would assist the senior nun sisters in carrying goods down to the town for trade. For them, this was already a good life. Most of them came from humble farming backgrounds, having lost everything to bandits. Without the master's protection, they likely wouldn't have survived. Returning to the main character, Fo Gi, each time she felt her internal energy was full, she would unleash a sword strike, repeating this continuously in a cyclical manner. After finishing digging, she found a patch of muddy earth, added water, and kneaded it. She then placed the mixture into a woven bamboo basket lined with leaves at the bottom. Carrying the basket down into the pit, she carefully plastered all the exposed areas with the soft mud. She repeated this process until past midday. Once done, she left it to dry under the sun and then headed toward the kitchen area. Grabbing an axe, she chopped down 6 trees, each about 10 meters tall, and carried them back one by one. At 14 years old, carrying such large tree trunks wasn't easy, even for someone trained in martial arts. She continued working until dusk fell, and the evening meal was prepared in the temple. Fo Gi washed up and joined the others at the large table for dinner. Water on the mountain had to be carried up, so bathing here involved dipping a cloth in a bucket of water and wiping the body. This single bucket of water was considered a full bath. The used water was then recycled for watering the plants. After dinner, Fo Gi approached her master and requested around 50 meters of cloth. Her master smiled kindly and said, "Our temple is too poor. We probably don't have enough money to buy that much cloth. Let's wait until we sell more herbs, then I'll get it for you." Fo Gi responded, "I need the cloth to make a system for collecting dew from the clouds. I plan to set wooden posts into the ground as supports, stretch the large cloth between the posts, and wrap it around the tops of the trees. As the cloud mist drifts past, it will accumulate on the cloth, gradually turning into water. The water will flow down to the center where it connects to a string, and at the bottom, I'll just place a wooden heavy bucket to collect it." Master Fo Hien said, "That's a brilliant idea, but our temple is a bit poor right now. You'll have to wait a little longer." Fo Gi nodded and said, "Yes, master." The younger sisters sitting around overheard Fo Gi's idea and quietly rejoiced. "If the plan of our little elder sister really works, we won't have to strain our backs carrying water anymore." "How wonderful," they whispered to each other. Man Kun, however, thought to herself with a cold smile, "The idea might be brilliant, but no matter what, you're still just a worthless failure." The next day, wooden stakes were planted into the ground in a tripod formation. Now, all that was needed was money to buy the cloth. While waiting, Fo Gi went to chop down large bamboo trunks, splitting them in half and hollowing out the nodes inside. After finishing that, she chopped smaller trees to make more tripods to support the bamboo troughs, extending from the water jar area down to the shallow pit. Since Master Fo Hien needed money to buy the cloth, she went down the mountain early the next morning to ask for donations. 3 days later, she returned with several rolls of coarse cloth, which she gave to one of the disciples to deliver to Fo Gi. Upon receiving the cloth, Fo Gi used a ladder to climb up and tie the cloth to the top of the wooden posts. She stretched it across to the other posts, tying it down firmly and creating a slight sag in the middle. In the center, she tied a heavy wooden bucket to weigh it down, attaching a thick rope to a large stone placed inside the bucket. At the rim of the bucket, she carved a hole just big enough to fit the bamboo trough tightly. The entire system was sealed with soft mud. Within a single morning, everything was complete. Now, it was just a matter of waiting for the water to flow down and into the shallow pit. Once the pit filled with water, any overflow would be directed back into the bamboo trough, which would channel the water into the courtyard near the temple. There, large water jars were placed, commonly used for cooking and other miscellaneous tasks. A day later, the bucket filled with water, and water started flowing through the bamboo trough into the courtyard. When everyone saw the water flowing in, they were overjoyed. Now that they had a reliable source of water, they no longer needed to waste time carrying it up the mountain. That time could now be spent focusing on martial arts training. Life in the ancient world came with many challenges, especially the lack of modern conveniences like electricity. At night, the only source of light was candles, which were expensive and consumed quickly, placing a heavy financial burden on those who relied on them. The thought of generating electricity seemed like an impossible dream. Materials like wolfram, tungsten, capable of withstanding high heat were non-existent, and even the best materials of the time, like black iron, would break down at extremely high temperatures. Recognizing the futility of solving this issue in the ancient world, Fogi decided to focus on her martial training instead. After all, no matter how fond she grew of this place, it was merely a temporary stop for her. The goal was clear. She needed to hone her skills, improve her techniques, and a day return to her modern world. She was determined to leave when the time was right. At 14, Fogi's body began to change as it entered the awkward phase of puberty. Her chest and hips were starting to develop, and her once flat chest was beginning to grow, becoming larger than those of her peers. She noticed the increasing weight, and the physical discomfort began to grow with it. These changes irritated her, especially since, deep down, Fogi was still a man from the modern world. The unfamiliar and uninvited aspects of being in a young girl's body weighed heavily on her mind. It was hard to come to terms with the idea of embracing this new felt, and there was no joy to be found in it. Fogi began recalling and learning how to sew, crafting her first makeshift bra. She used straps that tied around the neck to keep her growing chest from sagging. In ancient times, people relied on yem shirt, ancient camisole, tops, and cloth wraps for undergarments, unlike the modern convenience of bras and underwear. Thus, Fogi made herself some simple but practical garments, all tied with cords instead of elastic, which didn't exist in ancient times. Thus, Fogi made herself some simple but practical garments, all tied with cords instead of elastic, which didn't exist in ancient times. She gathered cotton from the kapok tree to make padding for her monthly cycle. Being a girl felt exhausting and troublesome to Fogi, who, after all, still had the mindset of a man from the modern world. The other sisters noticed her practical clothing and began copying her. Even Man Quan and her clique imitated the designs, though their feelings toward Fogi remained unchanged. They secretly mocked her. 14 years old, and only at level 13. What a disgrace, Man Quan scoffed. Meanwhile, she and the others had progressed further, learning more advanced martial arts from the master or from secret manuals books. And so, another 2 years passed. Fogi raised her level to 15, with her swordsmanship reaching the 3rd stage and Dongguin cultivation also advancing to the 3rd level. Some of the more advanced disciples were allowed to descend the mountain for tasks or fundraising for the temple. The number of villagers visiting the temple increased, though only slightly. In the small town, the grain store, the pharmacy, and the merchant guild were the 3 places where the disciples frequently visited. Inside the merchant guild, there were various tasks like gathering resources, escorting goods, and helping martial artists earn a living. However, in the small town, the number of available missions was limited and the income was low. For greater rewards, one had to venture into bustling cities, where the opportunities were many, but so were the dangers. Hidden experts and lurking threats were abundant. Among the disciples, Man Quan had the highest talent, having reached level 53, making her a nun among the elite martial artists. Every disciple at the temple spent some time learning the 5-venom mystical sutra, giving them a slight resistance to poisons, which helped them avoid being easily ambushed. However, only by mastering the deeper levels of this technique could one be truly safe from poison. But with so many core martial arts skills to focus on, dedicating time to other practices was nearly impossible. Every 10 levels, the disciples were allowed to learn a new martial skill that corresponded with their level of inner strength. The main character, Fogi, lagged behind, still under level 20 and therefore not permitted to leave the mountain. She continued her slow and steady cultivation. Despite Man Quan's high level, she remained cautious and only ventured into familiar areas around the mountain and the nearby town, avoiding the larger cities. She understood that the world outside was still chaotic and full of danger. Her current position came about because bandits had stolen everything from her, turning her once peaceful life into that of a nun. The hatred burned deep within her, but she lacked the strength to seek revenge, even with her natural talent. Since becoming a nun, she tried to let go of worldly desires, though the thoughts still lingered. Returning to the main character, Fogi remained diligent as usual, splitting her time between cultivation and growing bean sprouts form food. She soaked soybeans for 4 hours, then spread them out evenly in a basket. Covering the beans with a damp cloth, she sprinkled water over them every 6 hours. After several days, the beans began to sprout, growing taller each day over the course of 5 days. Fogi blanched the bean sprouts in boiling water, then mixed them with salt and set them out on the dining table, dividing the portions evenly for everyone. The temple's residents, intrigued by this new dish, gathered to taste it. Although simply seasoned with salt, the natural sweetness of the sprouts made it delicious. Fogi said that if they ate bean sprouts regularly, they would grow taller and become beautiful, a naive thought about becoming graceful nuns admired by many. However, Fogi was unaware of the world's turmoil, as the recent change in the dynasty had left it in chaos. Beautiful women often became targets for evil men, abducted and sold as slaves. Despite Fogi's innocent thinking, their remote mountain location and martial arts training likely ensured no one would dare approach them with ill intentions. Master Fo Hien heard Fogi's words and smiled gently, but continued eating as usual. Life passed peacefully like this. As time went on, Fogi continued to make progress, advancing her swordsmanship and Dunguin cultivation to the 3rd tier. Her cultivation level had also increased to tier 17, reaching level 17, and after another 3 years, Fogi finally approached her first milestone as a Buddhist nun. Her inner strength reached tier 20, allowing her to learn new skills. At this point, Fogi acquired the chanting skill Fo Du Chung Sin, Universal Salvation, and also learned lightness skill, which allowed her to channel inner energy to her feet, enabling her to run and leap lightly, even stepping on leaves midair. Another 3 years passed, and Fogi turned 17. Her level had increased, but in all the 17 years she had spent in this foreign world, she had never once received any contact from the angel who had brought her here. Not a single message, as if the celestial being had forgotten her. What about her mission? Saving the world and her family? How? These thoughts crossed Fogi's mind, but she eventually let them go, focusing instead on surviving in this world and continuing to wait. At level 20, Fogi learned a new skill, a soul requiem chant. It was meant to purify the souls of the deceased, but it also had another effect on the living. In an instant, it could restore a person's vitality, healing minor wounds. However, if someone was gravely injured or had lost too much blood, the skill became useless. Every day, She practiced chanting this mantra until she mastered it. Once it was perfected, she returned to her routine of sword training, doing cultivation, and enhancing her inner strength. Her mastery of lightness skill had also improved. Whenever she used it, she could run and leap midair, though it consumed 1 point of inner energy for each second it was active. The more inner energy she had, the longer she could maintain the skill. During these 3 years, Fogi's junior disciples also advanced in levels. Man Quan, with her exceptional talent, had reached level 60 and was bestowed the title of Golden Saint Nun by their master. Now, she could confidently travel the martial world as a respected expert, earning money for the temple while honing her newly acquired skills. The other disciples had also advanced. Some reached level 50, others level 47 or 44. They were now capable of following senior sister Man Quan to venture into the martial world, training through real-world experiences. Fogi, too, could accompany the skilled Man Quan to further her training. If fortunate, her universal salvation chant could evolve into Fo Te Chung Sin, universal sacrifice for sentient beings, allowing her to purify a wider area rather than one-on-one. Information. Fogi, 17 years old. Height, 157 centimeters. Level, 20. Inner strength, 300 of 300 Jade Maiden Sword. Technique, 3rd level Dongguan Method. 3rd level Universal Salvation Sutra. 1st level. Fogi had also blossomed into a beautiful young woman with a full, curvaceous figure and a large, well-rounded chest. The weight of her ample chest caused her discomfort, something she was unaccustomed to from her previous life as a man, despite having a support bra to help bear the weight. Since reaching level 17, Fogi's ability to understand and control her inner strength had become much smoother, unlike the difficulties she faced when she was under level 16. Over the course of 3 years, she had made steady progress. Time continued to flow peacefully despite the conflicts beyond the mountains. She diligently cultivated her skills. Another year passed. Fogi was now 18. During this time, their master had accepted several new disciples, and her junior sisters had begun guiding them into the Buddhist path. Daily visitors came to the temple to worship Buddha, with weekends being the busiest. The donations for incense offerings increased steadily. However, the influx of people, including a few unsavory individuals, began to notice the beauty of the nuns in the temple. Though they had shaved heads and donned the robes of nuns, their radiant beauty remained undiminished. Many could not help but sigh in regret. Such beauty! If only they were courtesans in a brothel. Imagine the fortune they'd bring, some thought to themselves. Just the sight of one of these women waving a white handkerchief outside a brothel would surely draw countless customers. Brothels in ancient times were places where food, drink, and entertainment like singing and massages were offered, and sometimes included prostitution. These men fantasized but dared not act, knowing the nuns were skilled in martial arts. Offending them would undoubtedly result in severe punishment. So, they only clicked their tongues in disappointment, made their donations, and left. The reputation of Amay Mountain and its beautiful nuns spread slowly, drawing the attention of lecherous men who began gathering under the pretext of pilgrimages to gawk at them. In a distant forest, in the year 1356, an elderly woman led her young granddaughter along. The old woman said, "Today, I will teach you my martial arts. Once you master it, you will be invincible." The granddaughter, nearly 5 years old, nodded and followed closely. The old woman approached a large rock, pressed a hidden button, and a door opened. Lighting a torch, they both stepped inside the narrow passage, just wide enough for 2 people to walk side by side. As they walked, the old woman began reciting the secret martial techniques, instructing her granddaughter to memorize and understand each word carefully. After walking through the dark tunnel, they reached another chamber. The woman pressed another hidden button, revealing a larger cavern. They continued walking until they reached a row of stone cells. Each cell was separated by thick stone walls. Upon reaching the cells, a man locked inside one of them quickly stood up and ran to the bars. However, before he could say anything, the old woman swiftly flicked a small object, hitting one of his acupoints. His body immediately froze, unable to move or speak. The old woman unlocked the cell door and stepped inside. Gently, she laid the man down. Turning to her granddaughter, she said, "Before we can begin the real training, we need special nourishment, something only a strong man can provide." The man, still immobilized, could do nothing as the woman prepared to extract what she needed, draining his vitality for her own dark purposes. Her methods were cold and calculating, using the man as nothing more than a tool for her sinister plans. The granddaughter watched in silence, absorbing both the lesson and the ruthlessness of her grandmother. She started to circulate her internal energy and said, "I will name this martial art in food gong, untapped song." Then she bent down, used her tongue to lick the tip of the black monster, then sucked it in and continued to lick it. The internal energy flowed out. While being licked by the black monster, the man felt ecstatic and happy. She continued to lick the black monster, then slowly sucked the nutrients from it. When the milky white nutrients from the black monster flowed out, went down to her stomach, the internal energy mixed and began to strengthen and nourish that internal energy, each time like that the level of martial art increased. She kept sucking it for a while until there was nothing left of the black monster. Then she stopped. Sitting cross-legged, circulating her internal energy, the internal energy flowed out, mixed and slowly increased in level. She said the ultimate yang nutrients from a man were very necessary to practice this martial art. Remember not to suck it all up. You have to leave some for the person to live, to provide nutrients for us to cultivate. After finishing cultivating, she released the acupoints, walked out and locked the door. The man whose acupoints were released, although the feeling of happiness and comfort had passed, his body felt tired, weak, and unable to move. The man lay there motionless. She continued to the next cell. She continued to throw beans, freeze another man. This strong man was the one she had just captured a few days ago. After unlocking, she opened the door and entered. She helped the strong man lie down, then continued to pull down his pants. She took out a small pair of scissors from her shirt and trimmed all the black hairs to make them neat and clean. Then she said, "You have just now comprehended the entry level. Now you need the essence, the milk of a man to cultivate. What I have taught you just now start to apply it." The child's hand trembled, reaching out to touch the small caterpillar that was still in its shell, then slowly slid it down, peeled off the shell, and fondled it with her hand. Starting to use the internal force to enter the entrance level, the child reached out to stroke the caterpillar, then bent down and licked it with her tongue. Feeling a salty taste, she continued to lick, holding the entire head of the caterpillar in her mouth, sucking it out and then sucking it back in. After a while, the caterpillar also became huge, growing hard and large. The child used her internal force, mixed it, and slowly sucked the nutrients from the caterpillar. A strong, salty taste slowly flowed down her stomach. After a while, after sucking the nutrients, the child sat cross-legged and began to cultivate. In few time, the child had reached the first level of the In Food Gong martial arts. She saw that her grandniece was doing very well and smiled and praised her for being good. At just the first level of the beginner's class, the child's internal energy had increased by 20/20, a difference compared to martial arts from other sections. Twice as strong. She told her granddaughter, "When we are at a low level below at level 70, we are forced to do this kind of direct action. From level 70 and above, we can perform martial arts from a distance to absorb nutrients from them. Each level, the distance of performing martial arts increases. At level 70, the distance is about 1 meter, at level 80, the distance is 2 meters, and so on." When the man was immobilized and his pants removed, He felt deep shame initially. After a while, the stimulation began to induce an overwhelming sense of pleasure and ecstasy that took over his mind. He lay there, savoring the intense sensation, which grew even more powerful as the nourishment was drawn out. Overcome by this euphoria, he lost himself in the sensation, wanting it to continue endlessly, until eventually he lay there, completely exhausted and motionless. Afterward, the old woman and her granddaughter exited the room. The old woman prepared a nearby chamber for her granddaughter to continue her training. Having reached a high level of skill herself, she no longer needed to train as diligently as those at lower levels. She trained only every few days and spent the rest of her time obtaining money, mostly through theft from wealthy families. She only stole when her funds were running low. Otherwise, she spent her time serving food and drinks to those she had captured. When she became overly enthusiastic about her training, she would drain the captured individuals, but generally, she would keep them alive and care for them like livestock. This martial technique could be practiced by both men and women. As a man, if he practiced this martial art, he has to do the same thing as a woman. He has to use his mouth to hold another man's monster and start smoking. It will be extremely embarrassing, but if they dare, their martial arts will be very strong. Stronger than the martial arts of other sections. That's why people call this an evil sect martial art. In the martial arts world, righteous sects hate groups of people who practice evil techniques. These righteous people often band together to sweep and destroy groups of people cultivating evil practices. However, no matter how many times the righteous warriors swept through, the demonic sect members always managed to survive. At times, the righteous even faced counterattacks from the demonic sect, leading to their own demise. Especially in times of war and chaos, these heretical sects thrive and proliferate even more vigorously. After grandniece experienced it once, the feeling was wonderful. She always felt like drinking more, drinking without stopping. But because grandmother said, you have to stop to slowly accumulate before continue using it, grandniece told okay to grandmother. Grandma, go catch a few more people so that I can quickly cultivate. Grandma heard and nodded and said yes, I am preparing to catch a few more people to save for you to cultivate. The secret room can still accommodate 10 more people. When a human body gets old, it will weaken, but for those who practice martial arts, this obstacle can be ignored. She drove a donkey cart down the mountain. It went a long way. Returning to the grandniece, every time he practiced food technique, she needed nutrients from a giant man's monster. Because there were only 2 people in the prison and she had just started smoke, she could not smoke anymore. The grandniece was impatient to practice, and then the feeling of craving for that nutritious taste kept churning inside her brain. The feeling of craving was too much, so the granddaughter opened the prison again, learning from grandma to press the male's acupoints. She performed the act of pulling down his pants again, massaging the caterpillar until it swelled, using food internal force. Using her tongue to lick, sweep up and down, put the monster in her mouth and smoke it. The strong man felt the pleasure reaching his brain, enjoying it ecstatically. The nutrients were slowly sucked out, until at last his body was tired. He lay there limp. Although this limp feeling was uncomfortable, he could not refuse the feeling of being ecstatically happy and comfortable. He wanted to enjoy this feeling of happiness longer. Prisoner thinks. After finishing smoked, the granddaughter began to cultivate and increased her level of proficiency. The granddaughter only wished that she could cultivate for more time and hoped that her grandmother would quickly catch more strong and healthy men so that she could smoke freely, smoke as much male milk as she wanted. The prison cell was designed very deliberately with an infinite water source. The toilet was connected to the outside. Just put it down, flush it, and it would flow through the drain to the outside, keeping it clean. Even so, the room still had a faint smell of humidity in the air. The old woman traveled a long distance, passing through several villages. Despite encountering many young men along the way, she chose to continue her journey into the strongholds. Her reasons were twofold: to purchase a variety of food supplies and to capture young men from wealthy families. She believed that only the young men from affluent families who had access to better food and clothing would provide the most nourishing essence. While she considered ordinary people acceptable, she preferred the superior quality when available. After purchasing the supplies, she selected a wealthy household that evening, aiming for a young man, preferably over 16 years old. She chose a household with a son around 19 years old, an ideal age for her purpose. Upon locating the room of the young man, she used her tranquilizer darts to immobilize him and then covered him with a sack, carrying him away. She continued this process throughout the night, capturing 3 young men in total. She would have liked to capture more, but her cart could not accommodate any additional. After returning with the captured individuals, she unloaded them one by one into the holding cells, untying their restraints. She then informed her granddaughter of the new arrivals, urging her to begin the training process. The granddaughter was very happy when she heard the news. She ran to hug her grandma. Then she quickly ran into the third room. Is this the behavior of a child of nearly 5 years old? At this age, people only play and learn letters, not do things like this. People say that being close to ink will make you black. A child living with a devil will also learn the evil things of the devil, that evil. The strong man was knocked unconscious. In his delirium, he felt something pleasant under his pants. He opened his eyes to find the ceiling dark, and he could not move. Below, the feeling became more and more intense, more and more pleasant. Then he gradually lost all feeling, his drowsiness increased, and he fell asleep. Nearby, when the 4-year-old grandchild sucked on the giant caterpillar, a delicious flavor was slowly sucked out, the fragrance lingering in the nostrils. In this era, people ate more plants than meat. Even if they were rich, they could only eat a few meals a month, so the essence, the milk of men always had a scent, a fresh, sweet fragrance. After sucking for a while, the grandchild stopped, cultivating the internal energy of Een Food Gong. Just like that, she continued with the remaining 2 people. The grandchild realized that this source of extremely nutritious milk, she could not eat or drink normal food but only need to suck the milk, the nutrients from the giant, the caterpillar of the man. For a child of nearly 5 years old to have such thoughts, it was truly perverted. The child lives with the old woman, who practices a dark and unconventional martial art. Her methods of cultivation are unorthodox and involve strange and unsettling practices. After locking the 3 new people in the cell, she drove away again, capturing 10 people more to save for her good granddaughter. On the way through the village, she decided she needed to tonic waste herself. So she randomly captured a strong man from a nearby village, in a bush. She pulled down the strong man's pants, fondled him, and used her Een power to suck the milk and nutrition from the caterpillar. Because she randomly captured him, she did not keep him, but instead sucked the milk dry inside the caterpillar. When she was knocked unconscious, the strong man was in a daze, feeling more and more numb until he died from having all his essence sucked dry. She sucked. At first it was just a little white slime, then it became opaque white, then white mixed with a bit of red, then it was just red. She has spent her entire life cultivating this evil martial art, and her current level has reached beyond 80. At this level, she can use her skills from a distance to draw nutrients from them, but she still prefers to take direct action, because she thinks that when she does such an action, a certain excitement is added. Martial arts training is no longer boring. Underneath, the giant caterpillar was shrinking, slowly shrinking. After she had finished smoking, she sat down to practice for a while, feeling a slight sense of pleasure, then stopped and continued on her way. She used a bottle of bone-melting medicine and sprinkled it on the corpse, which slowly dissolved into water. The old woman departed, climbing into her donkey cart to head towards the city, continuing her plan to capture 7 more men to bring back for her granddaughter. In the village, after a day without any sign of the man returning, his family searched for him throughout the night and into the morning, but found no trace. The old woman casually drove through various neighborhoods, paying close attention to the surroundings. She focused on young, handsome men dressed in fine, luxurious clothing. She observed and tracked potential targets, waiting until she identified their homes. On one dark night, she captured several individuals in one sweep, taking them back along with their valuables. After a night of capturing, the cart was filled with bags containing the people she had captured. The cart was heavy, so it moved slowly, and it took more than a day to return. She imprisoned the 7 remaining captives and then took some time to rest. In the city, there were continuous reports of young men being abducted and their property stolen. Despite searches, no leads were found, leaving the case unresolved. Back at the monastery on Mauname, in her private room, Fogi continued her internal energy training. Time slowly passed. Another period went by, and Fogi had added another year to her age. Her skills in the Jade Maiden Sword technique and the Doomguin technique had both improved to a new level, but her overall level remained unchanged. Fogi continued to feel a deep sense of frustration. Despite her diligent efforts, her progress was still slower than even those with average talent. Was this body truly destined to be a failure? Although her martial arts skills were advancing, they were still not keeping pace with even the most ordinary practitioners in the monastery. Reflecting on this, Fogi could only sigh and continue striving. Master Fo Hien, despite her affection and favor towards Fogi, recognized a harsh truth. The child lacked the innate talent for martial arts and could not be groomed as the future successor of the monastery. Initially, she had hoped that if the child had at least average talent, she might manage. However, it had become clear that Fogi was truly inadequate. Master Fo Hien contemplated selecting another disciple to replace Fogi as the future head of the monastery, though she loved her dearly and considered her a true daughter. Among the disciples, Master Fo Hien noticed that Man Quan had exceptional talent and was diligent in earning money. Man Quan could potentially become a candidate for the future leadership. For now, however, Master Fo Hien continued to wait, hoping for some change in her beloved Fogi. Man Quan, on the other hand, had her own thoughts. If she were to become the head of the monastery in the future, she would quickly expel the underperforming Fogi. The monastery could not afford to harbor such a useless burden. Man Quan was astute in reading the overall situation and saw that Master Fo Hien was considering selecting a future leader. Motivated by this, Man Quan worked hard to improve her skills, earn money, and complete missions. Returning to the reality of the bustling city continued its daily rhythm. Drivers navigated their routes to work, merchants arranged their wares for sale, and pedestrians hurriedly strode past, clutching their morning coffee. In a narrow alley, a figure stumbled forward, its skin pale, with a sickly blend of green, gray, and black. Faint green veins pulsed beneath the surface, while bloodshot eyes gleamed ominously. Drool spilled from the corners of its mouth, some splattering onto the ground, resembling the froth of a rabid animal. A male zombie, sluggish in movement, inched closer, drawn to the sound of rushing footsteps. As dawn broke, the city awakened with urgency, people moving hastily to begin their day. Oblivious to the looming danger, no one paid heed to the zombie approaching, preparing to blend into the bustling crowd. Suddenly, the zombie's outstretched hand grasped the sleeve of a man engrossed in his paperwork. Focused on the details of his morning presentation, he was reviewing key points for an important meeting. The unexpected tug made him pause, turning to find a grotesque figure with bloodshot eyes and patches of dried blood staining its ragged clothing. She aimed to prove her capabilities to Master Fo Hien, showing that she deserved to be the successor and lead the monastery. Fogi did not concern herself with the matter of managing the monastery. Her main focus was to master martial arts skills and then return to fulfill the divine mission assigned to her. If she knew of her master's intentions, she would surely refuse immediately. Fogi was genuinely curious about whether she would still be able to use this female body upon her return, or if she would revert to her original form. The stench hit him, a nauseating odor that churned his stomach, almost making him vomit his breakfast. He barely glanced before trying to pull away, only to be shoved to the ground, right off the curb. Pinned beneath the filthy stranger, the man watched in horror as the creature opened its mouth, revealing frothy saliva dripping like that of a rabid dog. Terror gripped him, but before he could react, the zombie bit into his cheek, tearing a chunk of flesh. Pain shot through his body as he shoved the creature off, scrambling to his feet. Clutching his bleeding cheek, he fled, his now blood-stained documents, forgetting the important meeting entirely. Around him, passers-by glanced briefly at the commotion, but no one stopped. They continued their hurried steps, indifferent to the man's agony and the growing chaos. Blood dripped from the man's wound as he ran. Meanwhile, the zombie, having bitten off its prize, chewed methodically. Then, it bowed face to the ground, licking the blood on the ground. Slowly, it crawled along, lapping up each droplet, following the trail left behind by its fleeing victim. Even as the zombie's actions grew more bizarre, the mourning crowd didn't pay any attention. A young boy pedaled by on his bicycle, only to be knocked down by the creature's flailing arm. The zombie quickly pounced, pinning the boy beneath its weight. Panic-stricken, the child struggled to sit up, but before he could react, the zombie tore into his arm with its teeth, ripping away a chunk of flesh. The boy's scream pierced the air, finally catching the attention of those nearby. They watched in shock as the filthy figure gnawed at the boy's arm. After a moment of hesitation, several onlookers rushed forward to intervene, try to stop the barbaric behavior, but the zombie lashed out, grabbing one of them and sinking its teeth into another male's arm. They were going to pull the beggar away from the boy, who could not know that they would be the ones bitten, tearing a piece of flesh. Book number 1 ends here. Please continue reading book number 2 to learn more about Young Woo's journey in the world of Miram. Print book also on Amazon.